what do men really need? And so as I thought about myself and my circles, what we even started talking about, Roz, is what men need, just like what people need. And women, I think, do a better job of fostering is connection, right? Men need an outlet to connect, to speak to one another, candid, to talk about what you do, Roz, talk about their hopes and dreams, their disappointments, their setbacks, to talk about their children, things they're experiencing, to talk about their fears. So we set out, we came with the tagline, fatherhood is brotherhood, and saying, you know, one person can cheer for the Bulls, the Bears, one person could be for the Redskins, but we can all be on the same team when it comes to our children. It's hard to get somebody to say, oh, because they see the humanity we all do. We're set up that way to see the humanity in our hopes and children, whether it's yours or someone else's. So we said, let's build our commonality and our bonds on that. Right?
The diaspora that we have been part of, like you said, we've kind of scattered and we've moved across the country, and there's more levels of affluence in the African American community, which has created some voids and some separations and a disconnect from our roots.
I was just reared that way. That's my lens. It's family first. I do think this country is sort of suffering from lack of family. Family cohesion. That's the work I'm doing at Fathers Incorporated. But my dad was an entertainment attorney, so we had people like Gil Scott-Heron, Earth, Wind, and Fire running through the house, and I just thought that was Uncle Gil. But I can look back and these were magical figures and powerful people in the community, who really were about something. So I think it's kind of centered me in the world in the way I like to think that I show up as a person of justice and truth, and of helping people and just brotherhood. And that's kind of the work I'm doing at Fathers Incorporated, where our slogan is fatherhood is brotherhood. I really do believe in, brotherhood, us standing together as men and as people, and fighting for what's right.
And here we go. Hey, welcome everybody to Conversations with Roz Clark. I am Roz Clark, the Dream Doula, and I am super excited to have you here today. We'll be talking about rebirth and resilience. And so this is a subject that is near and dear to my heart, and I'm going to be coming at it from a couple of different perspectives. So we're super excited about this series and super excited to have you here. And I just have to let you know that this episode is powered by Kajabi. Kajabi is the platform that you can bring all your elements together and reach your community, build your business and your brand, and serve your community all in one place. So check the comment sections below, and we'll have a link in there for you to have more information. And speaking of comments, make sure that you do like, subscribe, follow, and comment, because we want to hear what you're thinking about. So today I'm super excited, and full disclosure, I have one of my favorite people in the whole wide world here with me, and he's doing great work, and I'm super excited to have him. So Javin Foreman, welcome to Conversations.
Hey, Roz, glad to be on with you. Thanks so much on Live and Direct with the Dream Doula. Let's have some fun today.
Yeah, man, here we go. We're going to make this thing happen. So, Javin, you are a man of many gifts, many talents, and many identities. So let's just start with, tell us a little bit about who you are, how you show up in the world, and then we'll get into what you're doing through Fathers Inc.
Sure. No, thank you for the opportunity. So first and foremost, I have to say I'm a father of three, born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, what I like to call a Shy alien. I made my way down to Atlanta back in the 90s to go to Morehouse College. And so as I look at it, I've probably spent more time and parts of my life in Atlanta than I did in Chicago, probably being back 13 years now. But yeah, it's for me, fatherhood is at the forefront of what I do, kind of who I am, not only being a father, but being a son, I think is part of being a father. And even think about the community I was raised in Chicago, and it's not always about being a son to a father. It's being a son, to a powerful, dynamic mother who is a community activist, surrounded me by powerful women who are entrepreneurs, movers and shakers, plus the circle of men that I was put in, from my father, playing sports, being a basketball player. And the men I grew up around, really focused on Afrocentricity, instilling pride in who we are as a people, and loving all people. Then I found my pathway into spirituality. So I think it's kind of, centered me in the world in the way I like to think that I show up as a person of justice, of truth, and of helping people and just brotherhood. And that's kind of the work I'm doing at Fathers Incorporated, where our slogan is fatherhood is brotherhood. I really do believe in brotherhood, us standing together as men and as people, and fighting for what's right.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really cool because, like, a lot of whenever I start these conversations, you really have to, like you said, start at the beginning of that community that raised us. Like this phrase has become cliche that it takes a village. And yet at the same time, we are definitely products of our environment. Like, I grew up in a working class blue collar neighborhood in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and then went on to turn 21 in Paris and become an opera singer. And sometimes that's incongruent with how I was raised, but at the same time, because I grew up in the church with people telling me, sing, Rosie, like those people speaking life into me, I think makes all the difference in the world. So as you speak about, your mom being an activist and the community that you come from, and it informing you as a father and as a brother and as a leader, talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I think Chicago, in my mind, is probably one of the most activist, politically conscious, and socially conscious, probably cities, in America, probably from day one for various reasons. We can look at, what happened as our people migrated to the South and made it to a lot from the South to a lot of different places. Chicago was a stop. Detroit. You can trace back people that came, to Pittsburgh, that made it over to the East Coast, coming from North Carolina. Our people a lot of times came from Mississippi. So, I think those Southern roots have already always been a part of my rearing and upbringing, just values. I remember summers, which we don't see a lot. A lot of our people have moved back to the South, but there was summers where you would go back to your grandmother's house, to get reconnected, your great grandparents' house, and hear those stories and things like that. So, grew up in a very large extended family where for me it was not uncommon to have cousins living with me. Grew up in a building where my mother's brother lived upstairs with his family. My father's mother lived downstairs. I had his sister lived on another floor in an apartment building that we owned. So that was my rearing. I can remember celebrating birthdays. We go to cousins' houses on a Wednesday. If it was somebody's birthday, we'd all get together, and it was just commonplace. So I think some of who I am is, trying to rekindle that, recreate some of those things through this world we live in. I think there's a level of disconnect and sadness that we see in our young people today. And it's not any type of judgment, but I think we do have to find ways to sort of pass those lessons, those things that we know worked, in the past, infuse them with what's happening today in technology. So I do feel like that I'm a bit of a bridge because a lot of the work I've done, Roz, over the years has been dedicated to young people, serving young people. I think I had such a magical childhood growing up with cousins, extended family. I had, my dad was an entertainment attorney. So we had people like Gil Scott Heron, Earth, Wind, and Fire running through the house. And I just thought that was Uncle Gil, but I can look back and, these were, magical figures and powerful people in the community, who really were about something. So, I know the experience is different. Everybody can afford their own place now. So you might have somebody stay for a weekend and that's too much for they get on your nerves, So I think, I was just reared that way. That's my lens, is family first. I do think this country is sort of suffering from lack of family, family cohesion. That's the work I'm doing at Fathers Incorporated. But I think it all ties in, like you said, Ross. Sometimes we find ourselves on a path and we look back, you wonder why you were chosen to do certain things, But my lens is definitely, my love for young people from my childhood. I still have 25, 30 friends that I've been friends with for over 40 years that I'm talked to monthly and weekly, So I think I'm looking to bring some of that fast forward to teach lessons to my children, to the young people that I coach in basketball and the things that I do. So I think that's how I'm kind of, settled in the world and it's my place. So I'm just trying to bring that message.
Yeah, yeah. And it is interesting because the diaspora that we have been part of, like you said, we've kind of scattered and we've moved across the country, and there's different levels. I mean, there's always been, but there's more levels of affluence in the African American community, which has created some voids and some separations and a disconnect from our roots, if you will, because you're
Yeah.
trying to climb whatever that ladder is, and you don't want people to see Uncle Ray Ray or whatever that is, and
Mhm.
so we've created this disconnect. And I think you're right when you talk about how people weave through your life and through your experience. My daughter had kind of the same experience, that we had a lot of people, actors and artists and performing artists, because I'm a classical soprano and I was running a company, and had a phenomenal people who were supporting us. And she studied with Debbie Allen, and we had Johnny Cochran at our home, and different people like that during that time. And I remember one time when she was a little girl and Space Jams was out, the movie Space Jam, and she was like, "Well, mommy, can we have Shaquille O'Neal come to my birthday party?" Because, like you said, it felt normal to
Right.
her.
Right.
And I do think that there is a part of us that is still longing for us, because for longing for that, because I know, like, I always cooked. I love to entertain, as you know. I love to cook, and so I had people in my home, which was not normal. In California, they were like, "Wait, you invite people to your house?" Well, yeah. And so, again, creating that bond and creating that community and that support that people need. And so, like, the work that you're doing with Fathers Inc. and your specific program, tell me a little bit about who you're serving and how you're serving them.
Yeah, so we were fortunate enough to get a grant about 4 years ago from Office of Family Assistance. They simply put out an RFP saying, we're committed to doing seeing fathers, rekindle with their families to spend more time. They also want to promote healthy marriage and responsible fatherhood. Are kind of their goals, right? So we had a curriculum we had developed over the years, and we said, well, we know we can accomplish that. Recruiting these dads and teaching them this curriculum, which we feel will, help them regain their footing in their communities and also offer some case management support. But, we wanted to take it a little bit deeper and being here in Atlanta. So as we moved into the project, my challenge as the project director was to figure out, what do these men really need, right?
Mhm.
So, I thought about it, and I thought about myself. So we had on paper, hey, it's going to be this 10-week course. We'll teach these guys 2 nights a week. We'll teach our curriculum for 10 weeks, cover the hours, kind of just checking the boxes. And so I stopped and thought about it. I spoke with the team members. I said, what's the last thing I've done for 10 straight weeks, 2 times a week, and have not missed? Is it going on my daily, weekly walk? Nope, missed that. Going to the gym? Nope, missed church. I couldn't think of anything, right? And so I said, wow, this is a pretty big ask that we're embarking upon with these guys. What would make someone do that? What do men really need? And so as I thought about myself and my circles, what we even started talking about, Roz, is what men need, just like what people need, and women, I think, do a better job of fostering, is connection. Right,
Mhm.
men need an outlet to connect, to speak to one another, candid, to talk about what you do, Roz, talk about their hopes and dreams, their disappointments, their setbacks, to talk about their children, things they're experiencing, to talk about their fears. So, we set out, we came with the tagline, fatherhood is brotherhood, and saying, you know, one person can cheer for the Bulls, the Bears, one person could be for the Redskins, but we can all be on the same team when it comes to our children. It's hard
Mhm.
to get somebody to say, oh, because they see the humanity we all do. We're set up that way to see the humanity in our hopes in children, whether it's yours or someone else's. So we said, let's build our commonality and our bonds on that, right? And so, within that, we set out, we did a marketing campaign with the Black fathers, here in Atlanta. And it's not only for Black fathers, but we knew that's kind of who our target audience was, but they could see themselves in the messaging and the marketing. I have a marketing background, from Morehouse. So that's something I was really conscious of, the visual. So we did it, built this machine where fathers are coming. They're coming to take the classes. They're excited, but oftentimes they're coming because we're advertising the brotherhood piece. We can assist you with a job, if you have a housing issue, whatever it might be, because at that point we just had to make these numbers in year one for OFA, but I still hadn't gotten down to the crux of what men needed beyond the brotherhood piece. As we dug into it, I found they needed three things here in Atlanta, which is child support assistance. If you're dealing with that child support system, help navigating that, which might impact your parenting time, which is your visitation. Maybe you have an order in place that's not being, honored, or you're looking for a modification, and then thirdly, Georgia's the only state that still has a law in the books around legitimation, meaning if you're an unwed father, you have to go through a legal process to claim your fatherhood rights. So this was a
Wow.
pretty big issue. Yes, once we landed on that, I said, okay, now we're going to build a system to address that. So what we've been able to do over the last 4+ years is bring fathers in, take them through this curriculum, which realize is building the brotherhood so they feel supported. You got 35, 40 other cheerleaders that are in this cohort with you. We pared it down to 6 weeks because we realized these guys need to probably get to some of these issues they're hoping to get resolved a little bit quicker. But through going through that process, they'd be able to connect with some other men who may face similar issues, or it might be married fathers who are going through a different set of issues. But just, sometimes I think what these guys describe to us, as bad as it can sound, I thought I was in bad shape with no shoes until I met the man with no feet, right? So just sometimes looking at your situation a little bit differently. And I know you talk about it a lot, Roz, focusing on that gratitude piece. So I think we're able to not only provide practical solutions, but get these guys to focus on gratitude and kind of where they stand. So far so good, and we'll talk more about it. But we're in our 4th year right now of a 5-year grant, and to this point, we've had close to 800 fathers go through this process with us. Yeah, so we're really, really what we call sort of building the brotherhood. By the end of this, we'll have 1,000 fathers that have gone through this process with us, and they're excited, really ready to take their place in the community, get back in their children's lives, and do what they need to do.
Yeah, yeah. And it's really cool too because of all that you like we started out with. You said first and foremost, I'm a father, and I have always, celebrated you and honored you as that father, watching you raise, two guys and a gal,
Mhm.
and making space for all of them to be, each of them to be who they're destined to become. And and watching them over the years, like, hi, Miss Roz, and hi, Miss Roz, like they're growing up
Yeah.
and just coming into their own. And like the fact that you are a Morehouse man, that whole idea of being a man and being an anchor and being a pillar in our community, that brotherhood, first it starts with family, and then you went to an institution that really ingrains that
Mhm.
into their students and their graduates and their community after that. And so what I heard you say is you have kind of a diverse, like, while a lot of the people are in one economic strata, there's other successful or other more successful people. And so you've
Yep.
got this kind of uh, I don't have the right word, collection of different kinds of men. So how do you balance that in the messaging and in serving?
Yeah, so I think, man, what's funny is what I tell the guys, the magic really happens with them. Like we just sort of roll the balls out, we set the parameters. This is the out of bounds line. This is what we do, and it really happens because what we find is people are people, And again, Roz, when we talked about being disconnected, sometimes it's being disconnected from that community you grew up in, or thinking, you know, um, you're disconnected by virtue of where you live, and you're disconnected by virtue of how light your skin is, in our community. You're disconnected by virtue of whatever it might be, your affiliation. You're disconnected by virtue of your sexuality, whatever it might be. Sometimes we make these assumptions, but again, when we can build on our commonality that we all love our children as the starting point, right? And so I think during this time, even the way in which our team, deals with these men as they come to us, we give them an opportunity to be their best selves. We don't look at it as if, oh, big eye, little you, or this guy's done so much, you haven't done much. We've had children of celebrities, and when people won't know, the facilitator may not know unless they choose to divulge it. We've had children of judges, who've come in, and it's the same across the board. And I think that's really the power in somebody who's working in corporate America every day. When would he get to interact with a guy who just got released from Fulton County Jail in his daily life? It just wouldn't happen. But what you find is this guy's experience in Fulton County Jail is just as valuable as your experience working at Equifax, as a project director or a manager, whatever it might be. It's just different sides to the coin. But when they begin to share their experiences, you realize, wow, my status, my education, whatever it might be, does not really protect me from these same issues that we all go through as people. My status as a Republican or whatever you might be does not protect you from these same issues you might face, which are human issues. And sometimes we just need to hear that. Like we said, we're so kind of insulated in our own worlds where you can have, Spotify, you can watch the movie you want to see on Netflix. You can have everything at your fingertips where you really feel like you can control your world until this outside force comes in, whether it's a relationship, whether it's an economic disaster, whether it's a fire. We've had guys go through that. It's a loss of a loved one that can really rock you to your core. And then you do realize that, I do need a brotherhood that I can sort of rely on and admit I'm not the strongest today.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you're so spot on. And I mean, obviously I can use my own situation. One of the things that I've done throughout my situation is like I'm very intentional about telling my story without telling his. And yet what I can say is, I came from what looked like Shangri-La, like, oh, wow, they're that couple and they've got that, this, that, and the other. And I'm coming up on the 2-year anniversary of moving to Savannah with my adult son with special needs. And I haven't heard from his father in over 2 years. My daughter hasn't heard from her father in like maybe 4 or 5 years. And so you look at this and think, oh, that doesn't happen to those kinds of people. And yet, yeah, it does. And so building a community where people feel, safe to have accountability or conversations or whatever. And I mean, obviously, the first thing is you have to want to do that. You have to want to be helped. But like you said, there is an equalizer that we all, my favorite line from Dreamgirls is, Effie, we all got pain. Right. We all have something that we're dealing with. And so while people might have looked at what they thought was the ideal situation for me, I'm essentially, a divorced single mom raising an adult son with special needs, or caring for, because he's an adult now, with no support and interaction from his father.
Yes.
So, in finding a way to address those issues, to highlight those issues without becoming a victim, whether it's the father who paints themselves as the victim or the mom that paints herself as a victim. That victim mentality doesn't serve our children.
Yeah. And let me say this too, Roz, because it's a word you taught me, and it's how you started this. It's that word, show up. It's how you show up, right? And I think sometimes people need the courage to show up better, or to just show up sometimes, but just understanding it is about showing up. That's what this life is really about, right? It's about showing up. And so it's the difference between service at Chick-fil-A and service at John John's Pizza, right? It's being a professional. You have to be a professional in life. We all go through things, but I think this is what we're not taught in our community. Man, they're going to let you know if at John John's Pizza wing spot, they had a bad day, that girl at the front, she is going to let you. It's going to be on her face. It's going to be how short she is. At Chick-fil-A, you may not know that this person is going through. It's about being a professional, but that's what I love, what it is that you do. And what I realized, the real power and magic is in the word, right? And for those who have a spiritual belief or basis, it's in the word. It's not in the money. Because like you said, somebody can have all the money in the world, but oftentimes it's what you do, Roz, is what people in your space doing, what we're, attempting to do in our work. Is you unlock people with words, right? And I think we begin to forget that. We take words for granted so often, the affirmations. I know that you have some courses that speak to affirmations and things like that, but I think we've let people take control of our music, which are words, which we see a lot of issues in our community. And, we see it in family relationships, how quick we're to call somebody something, what we're to call ourselves and call each other, the words we've chosen to use. I think once we get back to realizing the power, and I think is what you are and, what you've always stood for, the power is with the artist. the artists have been the ones to create, whether it's in word, it's in sound, it's in dance, right? We've begun to sort of reduce that as we've seen the monetary gains that can be made off of artists, right? And so we've sort of taken that for granted. And I think as we get back to that, we'll see a lot of these things, dissipate. But it's first realizing, because I thought about it, man, why somebody, and a lot of times for the guys even, and they can visit our website, gentlewarriorsacademy.com. You can hear these guys talk about it. Check some of our graduation videos on YouTube at Fathers Incorporated, and you'll hear these guys talk. Oftentimes they're like, I thought this was a scam. I didn't think anything was out here for men that was like this, just a space for me to release and sort of be myself. And, and they really do become brothers, because their cohorts will have a Monday, Wednesday cohort, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. It might be 25 guys in that one. Then we'll have a cohort for 18 to 29-year-olds. 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. a couple days a week, then our 30 plus. So it might be 25, 30 guys in each one, and they become really tight during those 6 weeks. So that, man, what's next? I really don't want this to end. We try to find opportunities for them, as we first talked about, especially with the younger generation, for them to connect in person, right? We don't do that enough. This awesome technology we have right here, but it's nothing like getting that piece of pie from Roz and that hug. Nothing really can beat that. As many StreamYards or Zooms we can have, it's nothing like that. And that's the other part, Roz, about showing up. What I've dedicated myself to doing, I had a friend I went to high school with in Chicago. He called Friday night. I was in the gym with the boys. Man, I popped in town for a wedding. Man, I'm coming down to see you as soon as we get out of the gym. Not taking those moments for granted. So I know your courses and things you do, Roz, really speak to that, but I think that's what we have to get back to, the art of being humans again.
Yeah, 100%. And and you hit on so many important things, the art, the power of our words. I mean, and you spoke about it, like Gil Scott-Heron, was a part of your legacy, Earth, Wind, and Fire, and it's so funny because even though I am a classical soprano by trade, I grew up listening to Earth, Wind, and Fire and Parliament Funkadelic and Gil Scott-Heron, and all of those people using their words to empower the most disenfranchised of us, and showing us that, yes, we have more options, we have more opportunities, and we have more power than we're aware of. And what I think is cool is I actually interviewed Pamela Warner, who's Malcolm Jamal Warner's mom. And I was telling her it's been so cool to watch Malcolm's evolution from being Theo Huxtable on the Cosbys, and now he's a bass player and a spoken word artist. And so he stayed true to being an artist as he evolved into his manhood, which is just phenomenal to watch. And I think that is so important for us to let everybody know, but for the work that you're doing, to let these men know that they have a voice and that their voice matters, and what they say matters, and like you're saying, and how they show up in the world matters, and most importantly, how they show up in the lives of their children has ripple effects for generations.
Yeah, that legacy. In fact, I was looking at, let me see if I have the numbers here, but I was looking at the number of children we've impacted. And this was my last graduation. Let me see. No, this must be my year 4. My year 4 numbers. So in this year, we had 220 guys come through and take our class. We produced 164 graduates out of that. How many children would you think that represents, Roz? Those 164 graduates. How many children?
I don't I'm guessing the average is 3 to 4 kids. So multiply it by that.
A little bit less than that. So 355. So that's 355. So if you think about it from the standpoint of 164 fathers, but that should be 355 children that we've impacted.
Yeah.
It's close to 900 children that we've impacted in the 4 years. So, if you can get a father to come in, and our curriculum deals with communication, co-parenting, masculine awareness, systems management. It's not that this system is against you, the core system. It's just a system. It's a process. You have to understand how to work with it. And so one thing our CEO talks about is this work we're doing is really liberation work, because you have to think about us coming from where a lot of our families came from. A lot of our men never got chances to be fathers 200, 300 years ago. fast forward 150 years ago, systematic things that had taken place, right? So a lot of us just did not learn the skill set on what it takes to be a father. It's kind of this mystery thing, whereas I think, um, same thing with mothers, but there's a tradition where women share this information. Grandma's gonna come to you and pass it. Well, if that child starts teething, it'll be that old mom's wives thing. Put to give this to the child, and right. And so these things begin to get passed down, and so I think with men, we've been too reluctant. Sometimes it's out of pain. It's out of, well, man, that boy might be taken from. He might not be yours, whatever it might be, just to kind of protect ourselves. We just have not shared. But now that we're creating this system, you can't turn it off in these men. They all have a desire. And the thing I will say, I think that stigma of deadbeat dad, like we've totally like refuted that. It's probably only been two guys that have come through that have just been ready to give up, because of what the systems have done, maybe their child's mother things that have happened, or their own inadequacies, right? And so, but we encourage them to just stay in the fight. To your point, you just have to show up one foot in front of the other. And we get calls back 3 years later, Mr. J, it happened, man. I got partial custody of my son. The system, man, I did it. I got my paperwork back. My child is now legitimated, so we see tons of success stories, but just knowing somebody has your back and somebody wants to see you and gives these guys the courage to continue.
Yeah, yeah. And what I find is usually when you have dysfunction or behavior that is not what it should be, it's usually rooted in fear.
Yes.
Be it fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of inadequacy. So what is it that you see or speak to or support these men in, or do they even realize that part of it is fear?
Definitely, and it's still something we have to constantly work with. So the legitimation process I talked to you about. So once they complete our class, we set them up with a case manager halfway through to take a look at their specific needs. If it is legitimation they need, we have a partnership with Legal Aid where we'll do a legitimation workshop where an attorney, a volunteer attorney, and how everything is free. We'll go line by line with them and complete that paperwork. Probably out of those guys to do it. Now, if you were to hire an attorney, it could cost up to $3,000 to $5,000 for an attorney to do this for you. We probably only get about 40% of these guys that even file their paperwork out of fear. They don't want to rock the boat. They know this is what they need to do, right? And so I think part of it is just not judging, and being aware. We do vignettes and testimonials so they can understand, to also create a vision for themselves. This is what my life will look like. I'm protecting my child. I'm doing the right thing. It may be scary, but let me let you talk to a guy who graduated last cohort who did it. He got his paperwork back. He's no stronger than you are, So I think it's just addressing it head on and let them know I have your back. And then also say, I'm proud of you. When one of these guys, I return a phone call. First thing I'm going to say is, hey, first of all, I'm proud of you for even making this phone call to say you need help in this situation. You don't know where to turn. That can be scary in itself, and then just be trusting enough, to let us guide you through this process. So, I think it's a process just depending on where that guy is in his journey. But it's like what we all know. We even talked about, that extended family, knowing you have somebody that has your back. If all else fails, I know I can go to my cousin's house that lives in DC. They're not going to let me fall. If all else fails and the judge goes off on me, I can call back to Fathers Incorporated, and figure out what I did wrong to try to fix this paperwork. So I think that's what lets that fear dissipate.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in terms of communication, because I understand the whole idea of the brotherhood and men modeling correct behavior. When or does the conversation of how to engage in a more healthy way with females, does that come into play at all?
Oh, from the very beginning, because we're big on the accountability piece. So, you'll get that a lot of times where a guy will come in and say, man, my child's mother is crazy. We have these 2 kids. You have how many kids? Oh, how crazy is she, bro? Is she crazy enough that you have 2 children with her? Come on, we got to take accountability, right? And so, we also talk about empathy, so from a man's standpoint, we say that think about what it's like to be a 22-year-old young lady with 2 children. You had hopes and dreams, and It's no boundary. Will you all's relationship may not work? Will she ever date again? Will somebody wanna be with her with two children? She's gonna be responsible, thick and thin, day in and day out, as responsible as we're gonna push you to be. Have a little bit of empathy. She actually almost gave her life, to have this child. Have some empathy. Think about it from the standpoint of a 29-year-old woman, whose career was going well, had a child, thought it was gonna work out with you all, for whatever reason it didn't. And now she's starting over. So that's a huge part of it. We when we push them to accept accountability, we actually get a add-on grant to do some extended work, which is around co-parenting. So we have the ability now to actually reach out to the co-parent. I always felt like we were missing part of the story. We can only get the guy's perspective a lot of times, which we're gonna push them to be accountable. But now we hit both perspectives, and so we're able to say that's fine, but it's all about the child.
Yeah.
Let's make it about the child. Let's healthy, co-parent in a healthy manner so it can benefit the child. And when you can focus the men on that as exercises, think about when you all first met. What was your intentions? And oftentimes it's not what we think. This wasn't some rendezvous that happened. He met this girl at the club just one time, and she was at the bar looking so good in that red dress. They hooked up and had a child. These were relationships, And so just like we talked about societal pressures and everything that's happening now, relationships sort of devolve. So we do have to think about this new norm and new dynamic for families, what that might look like, extended nuclear families and that sort of thing. Not be judgmental, but help people begin to work through it, but also see the value in that family being together. My wife and I, we just celebrated 17 years of marriage on Monday. And yeah, so we just thought back, over, like there were times we absolutely could have pulled the cord, could have jumped off the exit ramp, but we said we just stuck through it. We figured out, we had a larger level of commitment, a larger level of friendship, even to each other, to do that. So, I think it's us passing on our wisdom, like we talked about, Roz, through the spoken word, so people can begin to think about things and understand sort of where they are. But even as I think about my day-to-day as a father, I mean, so much of my life and what I do is built around, I think they're in this stage of need. You probably know it better than I do. Right now, well, most of my time should be dedicated to developing them. You always push me to not forget about what I need and what I need to do for myself. And that's absolutely within that. But I feel they're in this place right now. If I can get them off to as best start as possible, whether it's career, academics, physical fitness, that mind-body connection, that, it'll kind of carry them for the rest of their lives.
I'm going to resist right now.
Come on, Rod, you have to do it.
So, and as you well know, I see and hear and celebrate you in all of that. And I stand firm with you. And the only other part that I will say is that other piece of modeling self-awareness and self-care and pursuing your goals simultaneously with serving the goals of others is definitely a gift that you are going to give your children, because it's going to be like, yo, dad was there with me through practice and all of that. And yet he was also about his business. He was about his dream. He was about the things that mattered to him. And that shows me that what matters to me is important too, that I can share the best of myself and still be self-aware enough to look out for myself at the same time.
Absolutely. No, I accept that. That message resonates with me, Roz. So I'm doing a much better job. I
am. Cool enough. So I know that you said it's a 5-year grant. You're on year 4 of the 5-year grant. So what is your vision? What is your dream? What comes next?
Yeah, so in all likelihood, we've been sort of I'd like to think one of the premier grantees. We've done really well in the work that we've done. We've been recognized. We received various awards. In fact, there was a conference that Fathers Incorporated also manages a contract, National Responsible Fatherhood Clearinghouse, which is fatherhood.gov, all the fatherhood commercials that you see on television through the feds also. So we're in a space where this grant goes on. This is kind of is budgeted in. So I believe we'll get it again, God willing, if everything moves right. But to your earlier question, what we are going to have a focus on in the next 5-year cycle, if we're fortunate enough to receive it again, is co-parenting will be a major component of it. I think that's something that's really, really important. We have some other partners that are coming to the table looking at the work we're doing around legitimation and wanting to support that. At some point, it will be time. I don't know if it'll be us, but we can highlight some of what we've done for legislation to remove this law of legitimation. I think it's unjustly punishing fathers, in lower income communities in lots of cases. I think it has a historic connotation to it, that's doing more damage to families. I absolutely understand the rationale for wanting to ensure that children have fathers, and fathers are present and that sort of thing. But in most states, you sign the birth certificate, you have your paternal rights, and you can work on whatever your agreements might be outside of that. So I think it's just putting an undue burden on fathers here in Georgia for that. So I think those will kind of be the two big things that we'll focus on. I think we have some ideas around economic development for these fathers, entrepreneurship, partnering with employment agencies to give these guys some livable wages. I think one thing we've also seen, Roz, coming out of Pittsburgh, you understand more than any. There were men in the community, these quote unquote blue collar jobs who raised families, who
Yeah.
man had great lives. I think we've kind of gotten away from that where we think everybody has to go to college and get master's degrees and PhDs, but the money is in HVAC, the money is in welding, the money is in construction and these sorts of things, whether it's you doing it physically or understanding that trade and starting a business around it. So I think we're going to try to do some work around that as well for the economic stability of a lot of these men in our ecosystem. So, and then we'll get to the point, hopefully we can also partner with some women's organizations, because I think we all have to begin to have these conversations as a community, and not only from a father standpoint, but from a community standpoint. What's happening with motherhood? We think, we know there are a lot of supports out there for mothers as they should be, but some of the most powerful lessons we learn are when moms or grandmothers or girlfriends or ex-wives call and say, hey, this dad needs to take this program. He needs this. One of our newest videos, it's a sister, our testimonial videos from graduation, it's a sister whose brother was going through a divorce. She recommended, she did some research, found us, talked to me. He wasn't strong enough at the time to have the conversation, got him in the program. She made it. She came to graduation and hugged me and said, thank you so much. I feel like you saved his life with this program. She referred 5 more men in our circle, to the work we're doing. But once we get the sisters to really understand the plight that men are going, that men are dealing with, and we got to kind of counteract some of this red pill stuff that's happening on YouTube, men and women at each other's necks and how bad women are, and black women won't date, and what men, we have to counteract some of that, with conversations of uplifting our people in our community, and begin to share stories of resiliency, whether it's like yours, you're dealing with what you've dealt with, Roz, and you're not bitter. You're showing up the way you're showing up, being there for other people, spreading your word and saying, look, it's not what you think it is, maybe on the other side of that manicured lawn, that we're all fighting to get into. There's some other things we need to bring with us.
Yeah, 100%. And like that whole, like we could do a whole episode on that red pill conversation,
Yeah.
because it's 50 shades of crazy, and it doesn't serve us. It doesn't serve how we evolve or who we become. It doesn't serve us as a community or as individuals. So I think that you are so spot on. And when we talk about rebirth and resilience and coming back, like, yeah, you do at some point in time have to lovingly let go and let people, experience the outcome of their choices. Sometimes that is the kindest thing that you can do for them and for yourself. And yet, bottom line is, you don't want your kids to be collateral damage in that.
Right.
My case, like, that I have to vilify or make that person an enemy. I don't approve, I don't agree, and yet I can't put my energy in that direction. So how do I serve people who are about doing something different, being better? And like, I love the whole idea of cohorts and community that you're building, because we know that learning takes place in community. And like you said, having these conversations about having that grandmama, that can speak to that both that girl and that young man. Because
Mhm.
your grandma could be like, boy, and just gather you up and say, like, no, we don't do that in this family. That's not how we treat ours. And they can do it in a loving way, and like you said, in that way of holding people accountable. So to
Mhm.
that point, how can my community, how can my viewership support your work, learn more about your work? Is there a way to make contributions? Tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about how we can support the work that you're doing.
Absolutely. So you can see a lot of what we're doing. Fathers Incorporated is that's spelled out. FathersIncorporated.com is our website. Social media is out there. Fathers Incorporated. So that's the umbrella organization. You can make donations on that website, and a lot of donations just kind of free us up to if these guys have specific needs that we can't cover. And granted, it might be a housing need, or it might be furniture or something like that. Or a guy needs a suit for a job interview. Small tools and fuse. We're able to do things like that with these non-grant restricted funds. You can also take a look. I would encourage you all to take a look at our I Am Dad podcast with our host Kenneth Braswell, our CEO. That's a pretty cool platform where you can hear stories from some of our fathers, even come on there and interview some of our team members. But also, if you want to see about this project, I'm talking about GentleWarriorsAcademy.com. You can go on, you can hear the testimonials of some of these dads. You can look at some of the brochures and information we're putting out. I'm on legitimation and on other things we feel like these dads need to do. The other thing, Roz, I know I want to have you doing probably some of your community, powerful people, who have powerful, strong messages that these guys need to hear, whether it's on a topic. We do a once a month session we call Daddy Power Hour. So if something you feel like you can bring to the community, again, honoring that power of word, sound, and information. It says our people perish from lack of knowledge. If it's some information you feel like you can bring to the brotherhood that's practical, that they need to know. It could be about starting a business. It could be an entrepreneur who has a message, what it was like being a single father and an entrepreneur. I'd love to invite some of your members to come out and be a part of that. But they can reach me at Foreman, Foreman at FathersIncorporated.com. That's J Foreman at FathersIncorporated.com. But yeah, I'd love to interact. We really are open door. We know it's going to take the entire community to sort of wrap our arms around this. There's so many important things. I believe fatherhood is the linchpin of so many things that happened in our community. I did a lot of work in youth violence. Get fathers back in the household, we can fix that. Whether we're talking about childhood obesity, let's get that dads back in to model healthy eating, to get that child moving again. Domestic violence, we have to be able to fix that. Get men back in the community who are healthy, who won't allow it in their own household, who won't allow it next door. Who won't stand for that. Whatever's happening with young ladies at school, self-esteem and all that. Let's get fathers back in these households, in these communities, no matter what that looks like. And let's win together.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Javin, thank you so much for just being here, for sharing this time with me. And, just like you said, how you celebrate the brothers in your program, as I do on a regular basis, but I want to do for my audience. I want to celebrate who you are, how you show up in the world as a man, as a father, as a husband, as my dear friend who has like stood in the gap for me in really challenging times. And like when I was like, am I crazy or is this supposed to happen? Like who you are and how you show up in the world, I am just so incredibly grateful for. So thank you so much for being here. And to my listeners, I want to just thank you for showing up. I want to encourage you to continue to show up, to know that what you do matters, that your dreams are the roadmap to your destiny. So I want to encourage you, as always, to continue to think big and dream even bigger. I'm Roz Clark, the Dream Doula. I will see you soon. Be well. Peace.